Good evening, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the south. The 9 mental health patients who killed. A Sussex NHS trust is criticised for underestimating the risk they pose to themselves and others.
They've allowed my father to go out and murder my mother, and there's no question if they would have stepped in, then my mother certainly would never have died that day.
The rail row deepens. Now Southern's drivers will be balloted for strike action. What now for passengers?
England expected and it wasn't disappointed. A capital reception for our Olympic and Paralympic heroes.
And Robin the Ritchie. Well, it is pantomime. How Shane Ritchie and Jessie Wallace aim to charm the Christmas audiences. Good evening to you. They killed others because of a mental illness, yet they were all let down by an NHS trust which failed to help those under its care.
Today, a damning independent review criticised the Sussex Partnership NHS Foundation Trust and said there had been severe failings in the cases of 10 people.
Well, the review was launched after the conviction of Matthew Daly, who killed pensioner Donald Locke. He stabbed him 39 times after a minor collision between their cars near Worthing.
Since 2007, 9 people have killed others. One his mother, another his wife. Some victims were friends, others strangers. A 10th person, Janet Muller, also featured in the review. She was known by the Health Trust but died at the hands of someone else.
The review found that 3 deaths had been predictable or preventable. Risk assessments by mental health staff were inadequate in 7 cases.
There were problems and delays getting patients the right treatment. Staff didn't understand their powers to detain patients under the Mental Health Act, and the concerns of patients' families were not listened to.
Our correspondent Malcolm Shaw has this report.
This is uncomfortable reading for Joseph Goswell, a report which says the violent deaths of his mother and father could have been predicted. Roger Goswell stabbed and bludgeoned his wife Susan at their home in West Chiltington before taking his own life too. Mr. Goswell was mentally ill, but he'd been released from hospital.
The poor man that he was, screaming out for help, asking for help, us children pleading with them to do something about it, and they've allowed my father to go out and murder my mother. And there's no question if they would have stepped in, then my mother certainly would never have died that day.
Today's report says 2 other killings by mental patients could have been prevented. Stephen Dunn, a paranoid schizophrenic, stabbed his neighbour Gordon Stalker to death, believing he was a witch who'd captured his soul, while Caden Smith killed another man while suffering severe delusions. Both had been treated by the Sussex Partnership NHS Foundation Trust.
What would you say to the families of the 3 victims of those killings who this review says need not have died?
Well, I would again apologise and say it's just not acceptable that would happen, and that I would assure those families that we're ensuring that processes are in place that will ensure that is minimised as much as possible in future.
The review looked at 10 homicides involving mental patients. It highlights failings in risk assessment and treatment and says professionals didn't heed family warnings. The trust itself commissioned the report after the case of Matthew Daly, who stabbed Don Locke to death after their cars collided on the A24 in Findon. During Daly's trial, it was revealed that his parents repeatedly pleaded with doctors to treat his mental illness more seriously and even to section him. But nothing happened. The Trust says it's now put measures in place, including daily assessment of potentially dangerous patients.
Should more of these patients actually have been detained under the Mental Health Act?
What the report authors have indicated to us is that our staff should maybe have erred on the side of enacting the Mental Health Act as opposed to continuing to treat someone in the community.
But the reforms come too late for families who've lost loved ones.
We know we've got a report out today, but reading through that report, that could have been written, 10 years ago and made life a lot easier back then, and there'll be a lot more people to be alive today.
Killings by mental patients remain rare, but today's report confirms more can and must be done to prevent them. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News.
Marjorie Wallace, the chief executive of the mental health charity SANE, is in our London studios. Mrs. Wallace, 10 deaths, 3 preventable, but how many other victims, we have to wonder?
Well, we've got to think about the fact that for every homicide, there are many, many more suicides, and they haven't been included in this report. So, yes, there are many more deaths, and then you've got to look at the wider implications on the families, both of the victims and of the perpetrators.
And we know in the Matthew Daly case, his family had real concerns about how he was coping with his mental health problems. Why weren't their concerns taken seriously?
It's utterly shocking because I've read the whole file. Matthew Daly said that he was suffering from autism, and the people looking after him, the care workers, just said, oh, they believed him, the patient coming first. All part of the culture of the patient coming first, without assessing what they're really saying, and then not listening to the many times that his father wrote and talked to them, saying that he had a psychotic illness, that he was hearing voices, and that he could be violent. That is actually a failure to protect the health of the patient and to protect the lives of the family and the lives of the public.
If someone has a mental illness, should they not have a dedicated team around them?
Part of the problem is the fact that there aren't the dedicated teams now, and that people have very little chance to see one person, a psychiatrist that knows their history. So they're visited by a variety of teams who come around, they take a snapshot judgment of the risk they may or may not pose, and because of lack of continuity and the fragmentation, people lose their trust in the services, and the services really lose sight of them and often don't pass on their notes.
And very briefly, what is your message to the Trust and indeed other healthcare services?
Every trust in the country should at least take on these very fundamental recommendations, which is that risk assessment should be done face-to-face and not just through emails, that there should be a clinical psychiatric liaison with the families, that the families should always be listened to and involved and their concerns noted.
Marjorie Wallace from SANE, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And for more on the report's findings, do go to our website, itv.com/Meridian.
In other news tonight, pupils and teachers from West Sussex have taken their fight for fairer school funding to Downing Street. Campaigners say schools receive £44 million less than the national average. Some head teachers say they'll face having to lose staff and increase class sizes. They're calling for £20 million to be made available.
We're funded up to like £10 per student, so that puts one student's education at the same cost of a cinema ticket or 2 return tickets to Chichester from Barnum, so which is quite ridiculous.
Well, for 6 months now, strike action has brought chaos to the Southern Rail network, and today guards began another 3-day walkout, their 12th day of strike action since April.
The dispute is escalating tonight with news that train drivers will now also be balloted for industrial action. Our transport correspondent Mike Pearce has more.
With 40% of trains cancelled, it was once again frustration for many, with buses in for trains.
It's horrible, actually. It's a nightmare, totally. So getting here is a problem.
Had to take the replacement bus today.
And how long's it added?
About an hour and a half.
What should have been, I think, a half-an-hour train journey took about two hours.
So you've now missed a flight?
Yeah.
How do you feel about all of this?
Well, I'm pretty upset, actually.
Services that did run were extremely busy. Southern say around a third of guards are now defying the action. The company is calling on the RMT to hold a referendum on Southern's recent peace proposals of no job or pay cuts and a £2,000 payment for the introduction of driver-only operated trains.
Well, I think it's about time the company stopped trying to bribe people on a principled issue of safety on the railways and keeping a safety-trained second individual on a train. Just repeatedly offering a bribe that they know no one will accept anyway, it's just preposterous.
It's really unfair on our customers here. Our staff have all got jobs at the end of this. In fact, our staff have been offered a pay rise for the next 2 years. So, you know, we keep asking the RMT, we've made you a good offer, Please take that out to referendum and let your members have a say on how we bring this dispute to an end.
The next strike is planned for the week after next, but the news tonight is this dispute is about to escalate. The drivers' union, ASLEF, say they will now also ballot for strike action in the same dispute. Mike Pearce, ITV News, Red Hill Station.
And you can find details on how the strike is affecting Southern trains on our website. Head to itv.com/Meridian. Any views or news, do give us a call, 0808 10 10 095, the number to ring, or get in touch via Facebook. Or should you prefer, why not send us a tweet at ITV Meridian. Now, I don't know why it is, but we humans, like magpies, enjoy collecting things, all manner of odds, bits and pieces.
Tom Hanks, for example, has a collection of vintage typewriters. Rod Stewart apparently treasures his model trains. And Penelope Cruz, well, she has a passion for coat hangers.
Coat hangers? It's amazing. And Sangeeta, you have a very personal passion, don't you? Would you care to reveal it?
Coat hangers? No, it's not. No, my collection stems back to my childhood days when I was mad about this man, these men, George Michael. Look, that's my original scrapbook, and I've got.
Still mad about him.
I still am, but I've got a collection going from the 80s, 90s to 2000. Yeah. You know, that's my childhood there.
Yeah, incredible.
You collect anything?
Yes, I collect very rare videos of Simon Parkin getting the weather forecast right. I've only got 3. Anyway, where's this taking us? To a woman who's downsizing and has had to auction her late husband's massive collection of teapots. Chris Jepson takes up the story.
They come in different sizes, different colours. They even have different characters.
He was a great researcher. He loved making discoveries as to what factories things were. The collection was not just because they were pretty, it was because they added to a knowledge.
Patricia Miller's husband, Philip, passed away last year. She's moving to a smaller property, but before doing that, she had the little problem of providing a new home for his sea of teapots. The biggest collection ever auctioned in Britain.
I bought him one teapot at Christmas because he'd seen it in an antique shop in London. He said, "Oh, I think that's rather wonderful." So I managed to buy it him for Christmas. And that started the rot, really.
The teapots date back as far as the 1700s, are worth as little as £2, and in some cases as much as £1,000. And the collection was sold for a massive £67,750.
They collect anything from cornflakes to stamps to teapots. No matter what, they're always passionate about it, and when you get to sell it, you get people wanting to buy them who are passionate about it. It's all about passion, and when you've got something that is quintessentially British, as tea is, you get some wonderful characters for sure, and you really do get some interesting days.
An interesting day indeed, one measured with a sip of irony. How does somebody who doesn't drink tea end up collecting this many teapots?
I don't know. We neither of us really like tea. I don't know why. It was always something that if we were drinking, it would be coffee or red wine.
Whether tea for two or something a little stronger, Pat will get comfort from knowing her husband's beloved teapots have gone to good homes. Chris Jepson, ITV News.
Some collection. My George Michael collection is priceless. It's 14 minutes past 6, time to cross to Mark Austin in London to find out what's making the headlines on the ITV Evening News.
Sir Philip Green apologises for the first time to thousands of BHS workers who lost their jobs. And in an exclusive interview with Robert Peston, he claims he's close to a deal on their pensions. The mother and daughter murdered by 2 14-year-olds, too young to be named. And Melania Trump insists her husband Donald is a gentleman and his accusers are liars. Join Charlene White and me at 6:30.
We will, thank you. Sports news for you now. The draw for the first round of the FA Cup has taken place, with our non-league sides joining teams from the Football League. Oxford United are away to the lowest placed side still in the competition, the Surrey Village team Merstham. Portsmouth and Crawley have both drawn league clubs, as have Eastleigh, who host Swindon, while Brighton side Whitehawk are at home to Stourbridge.
And there are matches in the Championship and League One this evening. Brighton host Wolves, while Reading entertain Aston Villa. Oxford United are at bottom club Coventry, and Swindon welcome Rochdale.
Meanwhile, medal winners at the Olympic and Paralympic Games in Rio continue to celebrate their achievements, and why not? Yesterday it was Manchester, today London.
Our reporter Kevin Ashford joined them ahead of a royal reception at Buckingham Palace later on this evening.
Well, the last of the action from the Olympics and Paralympics out in Rio may have finished a month ago, but the celebrations for what was achieved out there, well, they just keep on coming. There have been a series of events across the UK, allowing fans to pay tribute to their heroes and heroines. And today in Trafalgar Square was really a culmination of all that. It's called Heroes Return for good reason, considering what was achieved by British athletes out in Brazil. 67 medals for Team GB. 147 medals for the Paralympians. Many of them are being paraded on stage in front of a very enthusiastic crowd, as you can hear. Among them, some familiar faces from our region.
Are you amazed or surprised at the level of support you seem to be able to generate still?
Absolutely. I mean, it's crazy. It's a month gone. It's time's flown. I've been so hectic myself doing bits and bobs for schools and whatnot, and it's been really good. And yeah, I think it's good to get the public out there and integrate with them and sort of get the sports out there and in the media spotlight. It's awesome, and it's a feel-good factor, I think. And obviously everybody likes a bad story, but this is a positive.
It was quite an event today, wasn't it? What was it like being out there on stage in front of so many people?
It's fantastic to see so many people support, Team GB and Paralympics GB. I don't think anybody realises how much it means to us to know that you get behind us. I mean, we train day in, day out, for every 4 years for one event. So the fact that so many people come out, I mean, family and friends were there, but a lot of members of the public were there as well, and it's just an amazing feeling. It's quite overwhelming.
Are you getting tired of these celebrations, or?
I don't think you can get tired of celebrating them. It's amazing to see all the support from the country, and we didn't get to see that out in Rio, so coming back here and doing something like this is incredible.
Of course, a lot of the athletes here today will already be thinking about their preparations for the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. But today was a day to forget about the training and bask in the glory of what was achieved in Rio. Kevin Ashford, ITV News.
Well, our Olympic and Paralympic heroes, they're quite rightly still revelling in their success at Rio, but they are not our only Olympic heroes.
Indeed, the world's first ever bionic Olympics have taken place, which saw athletes with severe disabilities using the very latest robotic technology. They included Johnny Beer from Aylesbury. Chloe Keedy went to Switzerland, lucky girl, to see how he got on.
Racing with robots, controlling computer games with your mind. No longer the stuff of science fiction. This is the world's first ever cybathlon. It's a bit like a high-tech Olympics. The athletes all have physical disabilities, and the key is how good their kit is.
It's about showing that technology can transform your lives and restore more of your independence than ever before in history.
Taking part in a bike race for riders who are paralysed, Johnny Beer from Aylesbury. He powers the pedals by pumping electricity into his leg muscles. The more he applies, the faster he goes, so it's a trade-off between stamina and speed.
I had the stimulation up pretty high, so it's kind of quite painful. I was really trying to beat Cleveland really hard, so I whacked it right up to the maximum. But kind of backfired on me there.
Overcoming a rather different set of obstacles, pilots in the powered wheelchair race.
Now, this race isn't a test of speed, it's a test of the competitors' skills at navigating their way over a series of obstacles that they might encounter in everyday life. So it isn't about who's got the flashiest kit, it's about whose is most functional.
And I knew the steps at the end was going to be a challenge. We just couldn't make it going backwards, forwards. It just slipped. The fall and rise is a bit too much for the chair.
Other competitors battle it out to be the best at using a bionic arm.
But it's little things such as holding a knife now, whereas I couldn't do before.
and I can cook my own steaks up, I can cook my own food up.
For the students helping to develop this technology, a rare chance to take their research out of the lab.
It's amazing because you can be involved in things that are like you can apply them in the real world, so this is amazing.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly, helping people and improving their lives.
A competition about more than simply who gets gold. It's a glimpse of how technology can transform the most ordinary everyday task into the most extraordinary triumph. Chloe Keedy, ITV News, Zurich.
It's an amazing event. I've never seen that before. Fantastic. Meanwhile, one of the best-loved couples in soap opera are to appear together in pantomime for the very first time.
Yes, Shane Ritchie and Jessie Wallace, known to millions as Alfie and Cat Moon, will be performing as Robin Hood and Maid Marian. Kerry Swain caught up with them at the Mayflower Theatre in Southampton.
Commercial Road in Southampton is a long way from Nottingham, and two small trees planted in the pavement hardly Sherwood Forest. But Robin Hood and Maid Marian seemed unusually happy. No sign of the tears and tantrums in their soap opera lives.
Oh. Get out of my way, Nan. I don't care if I'm 6 months pregnant, I'm going to kill you.
Cat, listen.
You nicked my money.
Our money.
You stole it.
Borrowed it.
Why?
At the Mayflower Theatre, the only tears, those of laughter.
I don't know what it's going to be like. All I can say, we're just going to have fun the whole time.
Yeah.
We're so in tune with each other. We know each other so well on and off screen. So to be on stage together again is going to be just great.
It's going to be lots of laughs.
So looking forward to it.
Yeah. Just me in tights. That's worth the ticket alone, really, isn't it?
Are you friends off screen?
No,
or
I hate
secretly
him.
Are you sick of each
I
other?
hate him.
Can't stand up.
Shane is one of my best friends, and if I don't speak to him for one day, I pine.
I know you don't.
I love him to bits. I love him so much, and I mean that.
Sorry. Cue the music. Everything I do,
No, it's true.
I
It's
do
true.
it for. Are we gonna do that as a duet? That'd be nice.
Robin Hood runs from December the 17th until January the 8th, in 3D with a big cast including acrobats and lead characters with true chemistry. Kerry Swain, ITV News, Southampton.
What can you say?
What can you say? Here's Simon, fortunately. And your Twitter picture shows you looking a bit like a panto character.
Did one at the weekend.
No, he really did. Check it out. I'll show you later.
Can't say any more. But well, I look like a panto character.
Did you?
But look, no,
Which
look. Anyway, look,
character?
I've got this for you. There you go. It's a blank one. You never know. Tonight might be
For your
number 5.
collection.
You never know.
Is you getting it right?
Well, no, it might be. Depends on how well it goes in a minute or so. But anyway, look, before all of that, a Tuesday treat, things that look like other things. We've not done it for a while.
No.
Of course, we had the panto there, Robin Hood. You get him in a forest. Yeah. And so here's a tree that looks like a
bunny rabbit.
Yeah, exactly. Philip Cox found it on holiday. Better than a postcard and duty free, is that, isn't it? Richard Lucas isn't sure what his wife's been feeding the tomatoes this
That's
year.
good,
She's
yeah.
grown something that looks like a stick man, yep.
Yeah.
Jean and her husband went to a pumpkin farm to buy some pumpkins.
Nice ones.
Found one of these. It's a swan gourd. It's part of the pumpkin family. You don't eat them, though. You turn them into lamps and things. Meanwhile, Peter Wilson has grown a potato that looks like George from Rainbow, if only it were pink. Brian Baines in Princeton in Sussex was looking at a poppy plant 30 feet away. Thought it looked like it had a head and hands, and he's even drawn it on. Look, he didn't draw it onto the actual plant, just onto the picture. And here's an autumnal bit of fungus from Michelle Dunning that she came across in the New Forest. She reckons it looks like an emoji. Of course, I'm too old to understand what one of those is. Having talked to someone young, apparently it's the Japanese goblin one. Meridian weather at itv.com if you spot anything else.
Is this forecast going to be accurate?
Get your video ready.
Hey.
I've got a good feeling.
Could be part of my collection. Let's find out. Simon Parkin.
From blizzards to pool, driving through Europe. Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Well, assuming you were able to avoid the slightly strong wind today, it actually felt quite pleasant, despite the fact it started off all a bit damp and autumnal. Mind you, to be fair, it's been nice to see something a bit autumnal when there are still seasonal anomalies on the go, like these poppies, usually here between June and August, still looking fine in Sutton Courtenay. But the weather is going to take a bit of a turn over the next few days. We got high pressure, that means it's settled, keeping the weather fronts out at bay towards the west, and the one that brought today's rain is kept well and truly out towards the east. We're sandwiched in the middle, and nothing too bad is going to happen over the next couple of days. We'll see some bits and pieces of showers just to the north of the region, perhaps overnight tonight, maybe an odd one drifting our way, but generally we're dry, clear skies, actually quite chilly initially. Temperatures down in some rural spots to around 3 or 4 degrees. In our towns and cities, probably about 8 and 9 by the time we wake up tomorrow morning. So we'll be a bit on the cold side, but it will be another fairly decent day. You can see there'll be some cloud around. It should stay dry. The wind not quite as fierce as it was today, so the temperatures are allowed to creep up a touch. 12, 13 degrees tomorrow. Still a bit below where we should be for this time of year, but at least they're going in the right direction. And those winds tomorrow around 10 to 15 miles an hour inland, maybe 20 along the coast. As for your high tide times, well, you can see in Poole in the harbour, just the one around 5 past midday. And then the outlook, well, it stays generally settled through Thursday and Friday with some sunny spells. Temperatures still hovering in the low teens, but watch out, it's the night times that will be very cold.
Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
And that's how we look tonight. In just a moment, we've got the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Charlene White.
I shall have our late news. Do join me if you can, otherwise it's going to be very lonely. But for now, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thanks very much for watching. Take care. See you later.
Bye-bye.